Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the natal chart for Amy Winehouse, and I've wanted to do it for a really long time because her chart is laced with soul, sorrow, and stardom, and her placements reveal the tension between raw talent, self-destruction, and a longing for love. And in this chart, astrology shows me not just the star, but the fragile human underneath. And of course, as always, I will be plugging in the asteroids because they really bring more nuance to the chart and explains so much more than just the planets. So I'm going to get started. She has the asteroids Snow and Humpty Dumpty, and Hades conjuncts her Chiron in the 12th house. And this means the wound that no one sees. When you have Chiron in the 12th house, it means hidden pain. And in this case, in her case, it's the soul crying behind the curtain, often tied to isolation or addiction, which in this case is addiction because the Snow asteroid is conjuncting her Chiron and Humpty Dumpty is there as well. And the Snow asteroid has to do with drugs, specifically cocaine, and Humpty Dumpty has to do with a fragile sense of self and a shattered sort of a cracked surface, so to speak. It's an image of a soul shattered into pieces, one that can't be put back together again, and that has to do with the nursery rhyme. So if you're not familiar with the nursery rhyme, you can look it up online. So with Humpty Dumpty, like I said, it's this raw, painful vulnerability, like she has never been quite whole. It's like she's always been on the brink of falling apart. Now, with Hades there, it shows the soul carrying dark, shadowy, inescapable struggles and pain because it's holding hands with Chiron. And Chiron has to do with pain. Whatever conjuncture Chiron in your natal chart, that's going to bring you the greatest lessons and the greatest pains in your life. But she also has the asteroid Deprez in the 12th house, and that squares her Lilith. So there's hidden depression here. It's isolating, and with her square to Lilith, it's a friction between private anguish and public perception with her raw female sexual power, and she's unwilling to conform. And it brought her agony. The agony came through in a dark way because Deprez is in the 12th house. It's a mind trapped in hidden anxious thoughts. And there's this conflicted, anxious feelings beneath the surface, which coincides with her sun making combust to her Mercury in 2 degrees. And it's in the 5th house of creativity. So it shows how her creative expression, which rules the 5th house, was inseparable from the conflict in her mind. Now, when you have sun combust, it's less than 5 degrees, and hers is 2 degrees, so that's pretty tight. So it can intensify the mental tension. And in the 5th, it manifests as that brilliance mixed with vulnerability on stage and in her music. So she's pouring this private torment into public art, which is why her songs feel so confessional and so raw. Now, with Sun conjuncting Mercury combust, I'm just going to explain to you how the energies work here because it shows the mind is so close to her identity that her thoughts are constantly overheated by solar energy because Mercury has to do with thinking and talking. And the closer it makes a connection to the sun, the thought processes become combustible. Now, her north node conjuncts Singer asteroid, and that conjuncts her ascendant. So this is her destiny. It's who she is, and it's her life's theme because the Singer asteroid is conjuncting her north node. So she's a singer, and it not only conjuncts her north node, but her ascendant. So there is a strong cosmic gift to speak, sing, and perform. But the asteroid Melancholia is conjuncting her south node. So the sadness and the melancholy is it's a comfortable energy for her, and she uses that in her performances. But it's also a past life grief, an echo from the past of sorrow that she couldn't let go of. So her art was this perfect mix of destiny, passion, and the melancholy that she carried inside. Now, her Venus in Leo conjuncts Arado, and Venus is the planet of love, and Arado has to do with songs, songwriting. So this shows that she loved to sing, and it came really natural to her because Leo thrives in the spotlight, and so performing wasn't just something that she did; it was where she shined, and her love for music and her natural charisma combined, making her stage presence magnetic. And she has Venus conjuncting Mars, and that blends love and desire with drive and passion. And it's in her fourth house. So that gave her private world depth and fire and creative energy. So that naturally fed into her music and her self-expression. But she used drugs and alcohol to quiet her sadness because the asteroids Pan and Bacchus is conjuncting her IC. The IC sits at the bottom of the chart, and that's where your inner child lives, your inner sanctuary. Pan and Bacchus conjuncting her IC, that has to do with overindulgence with alcohol and substance abuse, because Bacchus was, in Greek mythology, he was actually friends with Pan. And Bacchus was, there was overindulgence, drinking, drugs, sex, and Pan was also in that, also has that same energy, but Pan played the flute. So here, there's both of them, adds to the theme and the energies of the alcohol overindulgence behind the scenes, because the IC sits at the bottom of the chart. It's on the cusp of the house that rules the home and the family. So whatever happens here, it's hidden. It's behind the scenes. Now there's music involved, and like I said, Bacchus and Pan. So her private self became a sanctuary of excess. Now Nyx is the asteroid that represents the goddess of night, darkness, and mystery. And she represents also deep, shadowy, often hidden parts of the psyche. So the asteroid Nyx here is also conjuncting her IC, and that shows her private self was deeply connected to sadness, darkness, and mystery. Not necessarily sadness, but, well, she did have sadness and depression, like I said before, but Nyx is actually brings in the added emotions of mystery, or the extra energies, I should say, of darkness and mystery. And she drew comfort from solitude and introspection, which fueled both her creativity and the hidden struggles that she actually faced behind the scenes associated with overindulgence. And like I said, Nyx is the goddess of night, darkness, and mystery. Also, in Roman mythology, Ceres, she is the goddess of agriculture, fertility, and motherly relationships. And Ceres also represents nurturing food and how we care for others. Now, when her Ceres conjuncts her MC, the MC, midheaven, it sits at the top of the chart, and it's what the general public will see. It's out in the open, and the MC also represents your career. So this aligns with her struggles with bulimia, and it also shows her relationship with food and her body image, and which became visible because of her identity and her career. Now, her Neptune in Sagittarius sits in her seventh house of relationships, and it conjuncts the asteroids rock and roll and Eleutheria. Rock and roll is self-explanatory. That has to do with, obviously, music, and Eleutheria has to do with, it's a freedom-loving asteroid, and this is holding hands or conjuncting her Neptune. So this makes her music the truest lover in her life, her symbolic soulmate, so to speak, because it's in her seventh house. And it wasn't just a passion, it was her escape, her devotion, and her freedom all wrapped into one. Because she has Neptune closely tied to her moon in Capricorn. So she longed for emotional stability and security, but also felt pulled towards fantasy, idealization, escapism through drugs, music, alcohol, or idealized connections with other people or other men, other significant others, so to speak. So her emotional her emotional core, her world was deeply entwined with this intoxicating blend of music, escapism, and the blurring of boundaries, so to speak. And she craved emotional security, but instead of finding it in people, she found it in rhythm, fantasy, and was drawn into a world where, like I said, boundaries were blurred. Now, Lachesis also conjuncts her Neptune, and this shows how her addictions, personal struggles were intertwined with a sense of destiny and inevitable tragedy, because Lachesis is one of the three fates, and Lachesis is associated with death, and this adds an omen of fatalism, or it's highlighting how her vulnerability because of Neptune was inseparable from the darker currents in her life, and a life that's cut short by alcohol. Now, these two asteroids conjuncting her sun, this tells a lot as well, because the two asteroids, Nemesis and Electra, they're conjuncting her sun, so she could be her own worst enemy, because Nemesis has the energies of betrayal, or betrayal to yourself in this case, or enemy-like behavior, and there's this pull that goes against. She doesn't want these negative energies, but it's built into her identity, and she struggles with it because of, like I said before, the depression, and there's Chiron conjuncting Hades, the darker parts of her psyche, but Electra is here, and that has to do with the flame of mourning, and it underscore themes of grief and sorrow built into her identity and her life story. She's torn between the melancholy on her south node. We have Nemesis here. She could be her own worst enemy. There's addictions, blurring of boundaries, and ultimately, Lachesis stepped in, one of the fates, and her life was cut short, like I said. So that's all I have today, and I hope you enjoyed this interpretation, and I will be back shortly. And if you're interested in getting a natal chart or synastry, my email is in the description box. Have a nice day.